I am pleased now to introduce our next reader. This is actually an introduction written by Liz Mayorga, and I am here to introduce Jennifer Virskus. Jenn Virskus does not mess around. She quit her job as the assistant art director at a magazine in Aspen and moved to San Francisco to get her MFA in writing. She came to CCA determined to write not one but 2 novels, and she did. When she isn't writing or researching world history, Jenn spends her time skiing down mountain slopes and sailing through dangerous ocean waves. I've never met anyone so willing to test her limits. No one with this much desire to learn. For Jenn, it's not enough to study Central and Eastern European culture. It's not enough to speak 5 languages. Jenn must explore things fully and live them. She calls her grandmother on the phone once a week to ask the questions books can't answer. She flies to Eastern Europe, to her grandmother's homeland of Lithuania, to explore the landscape that has shaped her family history. Jenn maps the land's struggles alongside family conflict and international war. Such a complicated relationship turns Lithuania into an intimate relative. It's no wonder resilience drives every character in her stories. Whether it's her grandmother or Louisa, Jenn writes about strong women who use their intelligence and sensibility to survive. They are the women in her life, her mother, her grandmother, her friends abroad, who have inspired her with their wit and endless warmth. Jenn comes from a legacy of brave women. Strength gets passed down from one generation to the next, and so came to be Jenn Virskus. It wasn't the cold winters in Michigan or Lithuania that made her this tough. No, tough is in Jenn's blood. There's something to be said about her drive and discipline. It's worth envying, maybe because she makes me feel lazy. If I didn't know any better, I'd say Jenn has superpowers, which is how she managed to write 2 novels in such a short amount of time. But I don't think she would appreciate such a hyperbole. Superpowers don't exist. Besides, that would take away from the wonder of the human imagination and the hard work that comes with writing. What Jenn does appreciate, however, is a good reader. And so you will have the opportunity to listen to her stories, to her beautiful language, her carefully crafted sentences, and the attention to details that bring her characters and their worlds to life. Jenn Virskus is all about honesty. She's all about admiring the beauty that exists despite all obstacles. That much is reflected in her work.
Wow. Liz, I just want to say that I love you. And I'm not really the kind of girl who does a lot of shout-outs, but my mentors are here tonight, and they have had quite an important hand in the work that I'm going to read. So thank you very much to Gloria Frim, John Lasky, and Judith Sarin. I'll read 2 sections, and the first section is from my thesis, which is my novel inspired by my grandmother's story. My grandmother screens her calls. I listen to the phone ring 5 times before I hear her voice. I could never call her in an emergency from an unknown number. She wouldn't answer the phone. Hello? Labas, Grandma, I say, stretching the long cord of the telephone across my dorm room to sit down at my desk. Oh, labas. She draws out the Lithuanian word for hello, like it's a huge surprise to hear my voice on the other end. Not only do I know she recognizes my phone number, she answered it, didn't she? But I call her every week at exactly the same time. Wednesday morning at 10, my time. I'm making my breakfast. I know this already. She's 2 hours ahead in Florida, but she sleeps late and eats breakfast at noon. I'm eating my breakfast too. What you having? She always wants to know. Granola and yogurt. Oh yeah. As if this is something great to consider. And then she tells me what she's eating. Black bread, no butter, a piece of salmon, and a leaf of romaine lettuce. Why she was up so late. Watching a movie on the Catholic channel about a Polish priest who rescues 2 young women. About all of her aches and pains, gallbladder, pancreas, left knee, bunion on right foot. And the latest mean thing Tata Maria has said to her, that Tata's kidneys are in worse shape than her gallbladder. I listen while I eat my granola and flip through a magazine, occasionally muttering, oh yeah, really? I've heard it all before. When she pauses for a moment, I seize the opportunity. Grandma, I have to write a paper about World War II. Can you tell me about Dresden? Oh yeah? What do you want to know? I need to know what it was like to be caught in the bombing and about Argumentus. Yeah, sure, she says. As if I had asked her for the recipe for babka, the sweet raisin bread she sends us at Easter, not relive what I can only imagine was the worst episode of her life. Actually, I've asked for her babka recipe. She won't give it to me over the phone. Just wait a minute. She sets down the phone. I hear something hard sliding on the counter, the clink of silver against porcelain, pill bottles rattling as she opens them and shakes out her pills. Water pouring into a glass from the ever-present pitcher of boiled water on the counter. Slippered feet shuffling across linoleum. A chair being pulled out, and, okay, I tell you how it was. I've got a pen in my hand, and my notebook is already open in front of me. My grandmother likes to talk. One question can get her going for hours. Dresden was the most beautiful city in Europe. I dreamed a long time about visiting it. The phone slips from between my shoulder and my ear as I reach for another tissue to wipe my eyes and blow my nose. What's the matter? Are you sick? I didn't realize how much of the story I haven't heard before, how much I still don't know. No, Grandma, I'm not sick. It's after 1 o'clock. I've already missed 2 classes. My grandmother has been talking for almost 3 hours about the train and the bombing and the baby. Anyway, you see how much I told you? Now you know the whole story. It's hardly the whole story, I think. She hasn't even told me how they decided to leave Lithuania, or why they went to Tübingen, or where my dad was born. But I don't know how much more I can stand to hear at one time. Yeah, Grandma, thanks. I should have enough for my paper. Well, that's how it was. The most important thing is that you know. You're the only one I'm talking with. You're the only one who knows everything. I know you do the most with it. I look at my notes. I wrote almost 10 pages while she was talking. I'll send you a copy of my paper when it's done, I offer. Sure, I put it in the album. That's where everything goes. In the album. She has an album for each of us. All 8 cousins. You send the grandma a copy of everything. I don't think I know everything yet, Grandma. You will, I gather. And then someday, you will write the whole story about how we ran from those communists. This next section is from the novel that I was writing when I started at grad school. It doesn't have a title, I just call it Louisa. Louisa was still the only passenger in her compartment. She wasn't sleepy yet, so she pulled the sliding door shut and sat on the middle bunk to look out the window at the lights of Bayonne. She was mesmerized by the lights, and the streets and the cars, at first so bright, and then, as the train began to pick up speed, everything faded into the blackness of the countryside. Soon her eyes strained to pick out the silhouette of a village on the horizon. Suddenly, the door was flung open, and the light from the hallway spilled into the compartment. A soldier was standing there. He began to speak, quickly, and with a slightly unfamiliar accent. Bonsoir, excusez-moi. The soldier saw that she was alone in the room. Est-ce que ça vous ne dérange pas? J'ai une réservation pour le numéro 35, là-bas, en haut. He pointed to the top bunk opposite hers. Louisa was startled, and it took her a moment to get her bearings and find her words in French. Her voice, shaking a little, said, No, pas de problème. After all, he had a reservation. How could she say no? And with that, the soldier set down his green canvas rucksack and began to make his bed. Louisa quietly watched him. He looked to be about 19 or 20. He had dark hair and even darker eyes, his olive skin gently tanned. He was tall and looked quite handsome in his neatly pressed uniform. When he was done, he sat down opposite her and took out a small plastic box. There was a little table under the window, and he arranged a chunk of extremely stinky hard white cheese, a saucisson, a miniature baguette, and a small chunk of butter. Next to the food, he placed a military knife, and then took out a small bottle of wine and a tiny plastic cup. The bottle had a screw top, so it was easy to open, and he poured himself some wine. Looking up, he caught Louisa's stare. She glanced away. Voulez-vous un petit peu de vin? His voice was gentle. She replied, Non merci, je ne bois pas. She was, after all, barely 16, and though she had tasted beer at a party or two, she had never tasted wine in her life. She was, however, enthralled by the stinky cheese and decided that it was a perfect time to get over her shyness. So she asked, Est-ce que je peux goûter le fromage? He frowned thoughtfully. Vous êtes American? Louisa feared she would hear that sentence often this year if she didn't improve her accent. With the sadness of defeat in her voice, she replied, Oui. The soldier brightened up immediately. With an accent so thick it was nearly impossible to make out his words as English, he said, I can speak English if you prefer. Louisa did not prefer. She was in France to learn French, after all. With all the confidence of a soon-to-be 16-year-old, she said, Non merci, je viens en France pour apprendre le français. Ah oui, said the soldier. But you will stay in France a long time perhaps, and you practice your English with your many people. I don't have anyone to practice my English with. Please, you make an exception and speak English with me. The soldier held out a little slice of cheese. His French accent was like velvet. Louisa had vowed not to use her English unless it was an emergency and absolutely necessary. But it was late, the soldier was nice, and so she decided to make an exception. Well, okay, just this once. She politely took the cheese and put it into her mouth. It did not taste like it smelled. It was rich and buttery, had an unusual texture and a combination of hard, like real Parmesan, but not Kraft. Also greasy, well, she'd never tasted a cheese that was greasy before, but she liked it. It was also smooth and creamy and a little bit salty. For just a moment, she closed her eyes to savor it. The soldier, watching her intently, said, You like the cheese? It is from Beaufort, from the French, my favorite. Louisa opened her eyes and smiled. I think it's my favorite too. You must try it like this. He broke off a piece of baguette. Crumbs fell all over the floor. Using his military knife, he lightly spread a touch of butter on it, sliced off a sliver of saucisson, thin slice of cheese, and handed Louisa a neat little sandwich. Louisa took a bite. It was almost too much to bear. The creaminess of the cheese combined with the spicy meat, something like pepperoni, but nothing she'd ever tasted on pizza. The saltiness of the butter on top of the crunchy baguette, it was wonderful. With her mouth still a little too full, she said, This is the best thing I've ever tasted. How long do you stay en France? I'll go to school this year and then spend the next summer traveling with my host sister. Alors, just wait. You will try many things much more delicious than this. This is a simple peasant's lunch, but you must try it with some wine. He took out another small cup, poured a taste in it, holding it out to her. Tiens. Louisa thought about it. She's going to be in France for a while, and she supposed she'd have to taste the wine sometime. Well, I suppose I'll be 16 in 23 minutes. I guess a little taste would be okay. Ah, it is your birthday! Mais oui, il faut le célébrer. He held the wine to her. Louisa, trying to appear like an adult, gently swirled the wine in the cup the way she'd seen her parents do it. She smelled it, slowly took a sip. The wine wasn't as bad as she thought it might be. In fact, it was actually quite smooth, tasted of black currant. It was rich, but not overwhelming. It went perfectly with the sausage and cheese. It is only a simple bottle. I am sure you will also taste much better wines this year. No, it goes perfectly with the food, thank you. He had been so nice to share his dinner with her, she thought she should offer something in return. I have a cupcake that my friend's mother made for me for my birthday. Ah, c'est gentil. But first we eat the dinner, and after the dessert. He held her another sandwich and then made one for himself. Bon appetit. Thank you for the wine. What's your name? The soldier stood up. With a little bow, he said, Olivier de Garret, à votre service. There wasn't a lot of room between the bunks of beds, but Louisa stood up too and did a little curtsy. Je m'appelle Louisa Sinclair, enchantée de te rencontrer. Hello, ma petite Louisa. I think it is time for your birthday. Louisa looked at her watch. It was 11:59. Olivier poured the last swallows of wine into their cups. Louisa climbed into her bunk and pulled her cupcake out of her backpack. It was chocolate with pink frosting, and it had a little candle in it, which Olivier lit and insisted on singing to her, Joyeux anniversaire. Louisa smiled to herself and blew out her candle. If her birthday celebration was any indication, then this was going to be a very good year indeed.